So we're just waiting for the first car to leave the pits. As you join us for the second pre-season test of the 1994 FF1M Championship, coming to you from the Hungaroring, located near Budapest, specifically Mogirod. Here we go, it is one of the Goombas that is emerging out on the circuit. If we check that helmet, it's Gabriele Tarquini returning to FF1M after a stint away. When was he last in FF1M? I'll double check that. 1992, that's with JGR Meister. He finished last in the championship, having scored 0 points thanks to a chronically unreliable Yamaha engine. He's hoping this version of the Yamaha is a bit better, although in the first test at Paul Ricard, the 3.A version, the shorter version, the Yamaha didn't look particularly good down the straights, unfortunately. Was topping out at about 290 kilometres an hour into Senior Corner, whereas the top engines, the Renault and the Ferrari, were doing about 301 kilometres an hour. As the Italian goes through the tricky turn 12 into the final couple of corners. Long left that nearly forms 180 degrees, and then the final right, which does form 180 degrees. Brief look at Mika Hakkinen out on the circuit. But first to start a lap will be Tarquini. This is the version of the Hungaroring that we usually use in FF1M, so the version from 1989 to 2002 in real life. Previously it had a pretty horrendous offensive chicane after this corner that Tarquini is going through now, but that's how it should be. Quick through 3. And about to cross the first sector point, 24.025. Tarquini's teammate will be Mark Blundell. Also, well, he last drove last season in 1993. That was with Pedersen. Then Pedersen were using Ilmor engines. Blundell scored the team's only point at the final race of the season at Adelaide. His stint before that was in 1991, that was with Willows Racing, and he got a podium at Estoril. And those were his only points of the season at that time as well. This championship result of 14th has actually come a bit later on, as we're sort of filling in the gaps up to the end of the 1995 season. So completing the lap is Tarquini, a 1:15.796. Who will be next to complete their first flying lap. It'll be Gianni Morbidelli. More on Andrew in a moment, because they've turned the form book a little bit upside down. Crossing the line comes the Italian. Nearly a second quicker than Tarquini, that's kind of to be expected. Max Verstappen going second in the Tilsley GP, 8 cents off of Morbidelli. David Coulthard goes quicker, 1:14.750, but immediately beaten. Who did beat him? Was it Martini? It was Martini, 1:14.2. Senna, second fastest, 1:14.265, 400ths slower than Pierluigi Martini. There's one of the new boys on the grid, Taki Inouye, 6th quickest, but immediately dropped down to 7th because the Willows behind of Mika Hakkinen, showing a lot better compared to Paul Ricard, goes up to 3rd. Tarquini going for a second lap. See how this compares to his first lap, but for the moment it doesn't look quicker. You can see the top right head-up display. Gap to his previous lap time, or previous best lap time, is slower, as it's red. As is Gianni Morbidelli's. So early signs are that the first lap on this set of tyres looked to be the quicker one, although that was not that much slower compared to his first lap. It was Morbidelli, who was only 400ths down. Verstappen, about a quarter of a second off of his best. And Coulthard 2/10 off. And then further back, Comas holding up Martini. Martini's going to overtake going into the first corner, also known as Hill Bend. named after that, well, I've named it after that spectacular overtake that he did on Michael Schumacher, but it could be Nelson Piquet corner as well. He did a good overtake into there, around the outside of Ayrton Senna, and drifting it. And then once the overtake was done, just casually raised the middle finger up at Ayrton. The Hakkinen stuck behind, that must be Tarquini, or is it Taki Inui? It's Taki Inui in the shake and bake. Let's go through these lineups then for 1994, starting with the numbers. So going from number 0, number 2, which are held by FJR. Number 0 is Heinz-Harald Frentzen, making his FF1M debut with the Yorkshire team. He had a bit more of a detailed career later on, but for the moment this is his first season. Alongside him will be Nigel Mansell in the Red 2. And that'll be his first season with FJR. Had a solid career as Nigel, not to the level of Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, but he is a world champion. He won that in 1988 with Shake and Bake. It was a slightly controversial one actually, because in the penultimate final 2 races, Mansell and main championship rival Ayrton Senna collided, first at Suzuka and then at Adelaide. One effectively deciding the championship. And a little interesting fact about Nigel is that he's the only driver who has ever had a dropped score. In that 1988 season, he best 11 out of 16 races counted, and Mansell was in the points 12 times, so his 5th place at the San Marino Grand Prix was discounted. Other seasons Nigel's had, he won his first race so far, because we may go backwards from 1986, the Australian Grand Prix in 86 with Dodgem, moved to what was then known as Apollo, now known as Tornado, and a handful of podiums, but the Ford engine wasn't up to scratch. Moved to Shake and Bake, where he won, then back to Tornado, where he won another race. At Monaco that time, he beat Michele Alboreto in the Willows to victory. Moved to Gajera in 1990, and while he was solid, didn't manage to win a race and was generally outpaced by Alain Prost, who won the championship. Moved to JGR Meister in 91. 3 podiums, briefly led the championship after the second race, which was after Imola. But ultimately the JGR wasn't the best car, although Mika Hakkinen did win later that season at Barcelona. Outscored Nigel come the end. And 2 difficult seasons followed, one with Andrew Racing, where the Judd engine let him down, I think, because the car looked solid, got him a pole position at Estoril. Only 3 points scores that season. And then an even more disastrous season followed with Shake and Bake, his return to Shake and Bake, largely because of an undeveloped car that was the midst of the technological warfare. And Nigel went the entire season without scoring a single point. So he's hoping for a return of form with FJR, and certainly in the first test at Paul Ricard, he looked pretty decent. He was 6th. And teammate Frentzen was 11th. Just looking at Mika Hakkinen at the moment, about to enter the pits. His brief run is done, and he currently sits 3rd, although quite a few drivers are yet to set lap times, including that driver there, Jean Alesi. More on him a little bit later, but I'm expecting him to have a very good season. Next in the roster, it's Shake and Bake running the 3 and 4, and their gamble paid off because they managed to obtain Michael Schumacher thanks to with free Mercedes customer engines. By the way, FJR running works Mercedes engines. Shake and Bake running customer Mercedes, and Schumacher helped the team get them for free. Although his teammate is Taki Inui. Well, Inui showed pretty well at Paul Ricard, actually. Inui was 10th quickest, and Schumacher was 7th quickest. Jean Alesi crossing the first sector point, just over a 10th slower than Pierluigi Martini, getting that blistering lap time, although Senna was only 4/100ths of a second off, so Senna outdriving the Gajera a little bit, because Andrew have got a good aero package. second sector point coming up very soon. Just at the exit of that corner, and that's a good second sector for Jean. Only 200ths slower than Martini in that middle sector. One more to go. As he turns the wheel, hits the apex pretty nicely. Now into the final corner. Long 180-degree corner. Into the start-finish straight, this should be third quickest. Indeed it is. And the quickest final sector, quicker than Martini anyway. Now we move to Rubens Barrichello very briefly. Now we switch back to Morbidelli, who's coming into the pits. Benson on a lap. It's a second down compared to Martini. As Heinz Harald goes through the final couple of corners, running the number 0, the very rarely used number 0. Later on, well, it already happens, but later on FJR wouldn't run number 0 again in the 2002 season, because they'd won the team's championship in 2001, but the reigning champion at that point, Cristiano D'Amato, did not get a drive. So FJR assumed number 0 and number 2. And D'Amato earned to FF1M after Darkwolf dropped Pedro de la Rosa midway through 2002. But the number 1 did eventually return, so we had this strange situation of number 1 and number 12 being run in the 2002 season. Rubens Barrichello in the double-winged Pedersen going through the final corner. Interesting to see if that double wing remains for some of the lower downforce circuits like Hockenheim and Monza. Barrichello goes 7th quickest, nearly a second off of Martini. Now let's see what Nige can do. Rounding the final corner. FJR don't have the aero compared to Andrew, but Nigel is a determined driver and he goes 4th. That's a good effort considering that FJR only had 6 credits of aero remaining. Andrew had over 30, nearly 40 actually, about 37 leftover budget remaining for aero. Benson completing another lap. And Schumacher begins his first one. 1992 champion is Schumacher. And joined Mitchell in 93 and didn't quite reach the same heights. Mitchell were behind on technologies. Schumacher nearly got a podium at Monza in 93, but cruelly lost that due to an engine failure. His first sector, nearly 2/10 off of Martini. And just comparing that to some of the other drivers, it is half a tenth off of Alesi's first sector. Running the 5 and 6 cars, it's Tyldesley GP. They had a miserable 1993 because their Judd engine was totally gutless, and Tyldesley unfortunately missed out on the quizzes, which means that they had no technologies at all. Their engine was some 30 kilometres an hour down at Hockenheim. As a result, their 2 drivers, Eddie Irvine and Roberto Moreno, failed to score a single point. As a result of 8th coming at Estoril. Schumacher completing a lap which goes 5th behind Mansell. Senna completing another lap. The tyres appear to be wearing a little bit, so looks like the first lap is the quickest one. Speaking of first laps, here's Olivier Panis, making his FF1M debut. He's behind Irvine and teammate Alesi. Let's see what this lap time can do. Oh, being held up a little bit at pit entry by his own teammate. It's a friendly French fire going on. This lap won't be as quick as expected. It's still a 1 minute 15.026. A top speed of 287 kilometres an hour from the works Renault engine. Tyldesley, they're running custom Mugen Honda engines. The Mugen Honda would be a totally new engine, it seems. It'll be an evolution of the old Honda unit from years gone by. The successful Honda unit, highly successful Honda unit. They've brought in Johnny Herbert, who raced with Willows last season, and debuting Jos Verstappen as his teammate. Look out for that Tyldesley, the blue and green liveried car. as we look at the multicoloured Mitchell for a moment before switching back to Nigel Mansell, currently P4 in the FJR. Showing pretty well at the moment. One place behind is Schumacher. Eddie Irvine on a lap. Let's see how this lap does before we move on to the next team in the roster. As the Ulsterman rounds the final corner. Helmet definitely doesn't match his car, but anyway, he does a 1 minute 14.849. A couple of tenths quicker than Olivier Panis. Running the 7 and 8, it's Gajera Autosport team in full. They've managed to obtain Works Renault engines, arguably the best in the field, courtesy of Eric Comas. Eric Comas making sure the engine was nice and cheap, so that Gajera could afford Ayrton Senna and retain his services once again. Now Senna, he should have won the Drivers' Championship in 1993 because he'd lost 2 wins, one at Monaco, crashing at Poitiers. That sounds familiar. And then crashing again at Spa from the race lead at the exit of the second bus stop in what was actually quite a clumsy one, I have to say. Those lost 20 points were very, very costly because it meant that Senna was only lost out on the championship by 3 points. He'll be out for revenge on what is going to be his final FF1M season before retiring to do some fishing, I think. One more go, and he's showed pretty well in the first pre-season test. He was up there. I think he was in 3rd place behind Martini and Barrichello. Look at Gerhard Berger for the moment, and in the penultimate corner. Just a little one on Eric Comas. He raced in 1992 with Mitchell, did the whole season with the team. Fortunately, it wielded no points because, as mentioned before, Mitchell neglected the technologies during 1992, which then ultimately cost him in 1993. Touched on Goomba briefly, they're running the customer Yamaha, the only team running Yamaha, and yet they decided to squander the opportunity to run Works engine for whatever reason. Maybe they were wanting a big name driver during the silly season, and unfortunately they didn't manage to obtain that, so Goomba running customer Yamahas with Tarquini and Blundell in the 9 and 10 cars. Next is Mitchell, running 11 and 12. Damon Hill has remained with the team for this season. And Hill got a best result of 5th, and only result of 5th. Only points finish that season. And teaming up with Hill will be Austrian debutant Roland Ratzenberger. Quite a late debutant, actually. Was born in 1960. So in the 1994 season, his debut will come at 33 years old, the tender young age of 33 years old. It'll be interesting to see how he does. Berger crossed in line to go 12th, 8 tenths off of Martini. By the way, Mitchell running customer Ford engines. Thanks to Damon Hill, he managed to get them for free. Although Ford are an American company, they've had input from British manufacturer Cosworth in terms of which drivers you can get the engine for cheap. Johnny Herbert about to go on a lap. So, after Mitchell is number 14 and 15, and they are CBA Racing. CBA Racing had a splendid first season in FF1M, largely in part because the quizzes wielded double development for their technologies, and they mastered it very, very quickly. They had good use out of it, and the car was very reliable, and that helped Rubens Barrichello and Alex Zanardi to a few wins, 2 for Zanardi and 1 for Barrichello. Barrichello's win came at an eventful Monza, where pretty much every driver was inventing their own circuit through the Rettifio chicane. But it's the second off through the second sector, so this doesn't look particularly quick. It's only testing, so it doesn't matter too much. Yes, Zanardi's 2 wins came at Spa, and the final race of the season at Adelaide. Right, Rubens Barrichello should have won that race, and therefore the championship, because he dominated that from start to nearly the finish, because on lap 77 out of 79, he inexplicably crashed out at the Brewery Bend That's the quick right-hander before the long straight, the De Kettville straight, then leads into that very tight roundabout hairpin. Roland Ratzenberger about to complete a lap. It doesn't look as if it's going to top the timesheets. And it's 15th, so at least he's ahead of Johnny Herbert, at minimum. Probably ahead of a few others as well. Yes, Barrichello's crash gifted Zanardi the race win and the World Championship. Zanardi doesn't have a drive for this season. That's why the number 0 is being used. It's unfortunate that Zanardi didn't get a drive. But it's the way it goes, unfortunately. Also not getting a drive for this season were JJ Leto and Carl Wendlinger. Both of those drove for FJR last season. And they were very plucky, although FJR didn't have the quickest car, nor the most reliable, and nor would you consider Leto or Wendlinger top drivers. Managed to be around when it counted, and both were in contention for the Drivers' Championship come the final race, but both got themselves into a few incidents. Wendlinger crashed out and Leto collided with Senna at the De Kettville hairpin. Leto had scored 2 wins and Wendlinger had scored the win at FJR's favourite race, the Hockenheim circuit. Back to CBA, who will be running Renault engines, and their lineup is distinctly French because they've got Jean Lacey and Olivier Panis. Lacey had a tricky season with Shake and Bake last season because Shake and Bake was a bit underdeveloped and a bit underpowered, but Lacey managed to get a nice 5th place at Estoril. That helped Shake and Bake to beat Pedersen in the Teams Championship, and that was for 8th place. The debuting Panis will be interesting to observe, and he was pretty quick actually in the Paul Ricard test. He was 5th quickest ahead of Mansell and Schumacher. Currently sits 11th, that's Panis. All drivers have set lap times now. Tilsley's not showing particularly well at the moment, but we are only 20 or so minutes into the session and we've still got an hour and 40 to go. There's Mark Blundell rounding the mid-sector. First sector was down compared to his previous best and his second sector point. He is nearly 2/10 down on his personal best overall. After CBA, number 14-15 is number 23 and 24. It's the Pedersen team who have put an entry in. They've got Works Ferrari engines and a very solid-looking lineup of Gerhard Berger and Rubens Barrichello. Barrichello out for revenge after losing the championship last season due to his own mistake. Gerhard Berger was also in championship contention into the final race. He was on 42 points, 3 points behind teammate Riccardo Patrese. Unfortunately for Tornado, as both drivers were driving a Tornado at the time, they fell foul to unreliability. And that actually cost Tornado the team's championship as well. They've shown pretty well in the Paul Ricard test, despite not much budget for aero. Works Ferrari engine looks to be very strong. Max Verstappen's on a good lap at the moment. He is 2/10 up on his personal best and the 8/10 down on Martini. See how this final sector goes for the Dutchman. Underneath the Vodafone Bridge, it's entry on the right, into the left before hitting the apex, and then hitting the exit curb. And Max Verstappen does 1 minute 15.376 to go 15th. That's a bit better for Tilsley. Behind is Martini, about to go on to another lap. So numbers 25 and 26, they belong to the Tornado team. They've got a very British lineup of David Coulthard entering his first FF1M season and Eddie Irvine entering his second. Irvine, of course, will be looking for a much better season compared to his one with Tilsley last season. David Coulthard, let's see what he can do. Tornado didn't show particularly strongly at Paul Ricard, as a possibility that the Ford engine doesn't have as much power as anticipated. Well, it is a works Ford engine, so that'll give them a little boost in the qualifying sessions to come. Because Coulthard and Irvine are classed as British drivers, managed to get the works Ford engine for cheaper, and as a result, Tornado were able to keep a lot of budget remaining for aero development. Gianni Morbidelli goes 4th, by the way, less than 2/10 off of teammate Martini, who just there overtakes Jos Verstappen into hill/PK corner, now through Hamilton Bend, because in real life Hamilton did a few nice overtakes around the outside of there. The 2013 race. 7th place Mika Hakkinen. I'll get onto him in just a moment because we've got 2 more teams to cover, Andrew and Willows. Firstly, Andrew running 27 and 28. Extremely Italian lineup of Pierluigi Martini and Gianni Morbidelli, and maintaining that lineup from last season actually, because they both drove for Andrew, and Andrew started off that 1993 season pretty well. They got a few good results, particularly for Morbidelli, who got a 4th at Barcelona. Then Mitchell came along and developed them a little bit, and as a result Andrew didn't get much more points afterwards. They still finished 7th in the team's championship. They were running Lamborghini engines last season, and they've switched to customer Ferrari engines, got them for free thanks to at least one of their 2 Italian drivers. And Andrew had the most budget left over to go into their aero, and so far that's paid off pretty well. Although the proof in the pudding will come at the first race at Interlagos. And the final team, the team that we are on board with, Willows. Works Mugen Honda engine, so should do them no harm in qualifying. And they've got a very good lineup, I have to say, of Mika Hakkinen and Martin Brundle. Hakkinen goes across the line, doesn't improve on his personal best. He remains in P7 for the moment. Hakkinen's teammate will be Martin Brundle. I'm trying to remember if Brundle was in FF1M last season. He was with Gumba. Part of an all-British lineup with Derek Warwick, and Brundle was actually last in the championship in 1993 because his best result was the worst result. There was no easy way of putting that. In fact, Brundle had the best result of 10th. He came at Monaco and Magny-Cours. Even behind the 2 Tilsleys, Moreno had a 9th at Estoril, and Irvine had an 8th at the same race. Sandwiching those 2 were Christian Fittipaldi, who had a series of 9th places for Pedersen. They were at South Africa, Kyalami, where South Africa, Donington, Imola, and Hockenheim. Those were Fittipaldi's 4 9th places. The Irvine had a best of 8th. Derek Warwick was 18th in the 1993 championship. He had a best result of 7th at Estoril. It was a high attrition rate at Estoril, only 9 cars finished. And 17th in that championship was Nigel Mansell. Let's see Tarquini improving up to 19th place on a 15.6. And into the first corner goes the Italian. Coulthard's on an improvement. Currently in the middle sector. Half a 10th up on his personal best, and 4/10 off of Martini. We'll see how that does. 17th was Mansell in the 93 championship, then 16th was Blundell, had that 1 point at Adelaide. 15th was Alesi, had that 5th place at Estoril, then the Hill was 14th, a 5th place at Adelaide. Then Martini was 13th in the ship. 3 6th places were his best result as Coulthard goes 7th, ahead of Mika Hakkinen now. Martini's 6th places came at Imola, Monaco and Estoril. 3 points for the Italian, then 5 for his teammate Morbidelli. 12th in the championship, 4th place at Barcelona and a 5th place at Monaco. And 11th in the championship was Michael Schumacher. He had 3 5th places and a 6th. His 6th coming at Barcelona, and then his 5th places coming at Montreal Spa and Suzuka. In 10th in the championship was Johnny Herbert. He and Alain Prost, they were sort of in the middle of nowhere in 93, just not quite on the pace of the top 4 teams, but comfortably ahead of the remaining 5 teams. Herbert was 10th in the championship with 3 4th places, Montreal, Estoril and Adelaide, and a 5th at Barcelona. Alain Prost in his final FF1M season was 9th, and he had a very well-worked podium finish at Barcelona, a 2nd place thanks to a clever one-stop strategy. Then we get onto the big 8 from that season. All 8 of those drivers won races at some point. First of those 8 was Mika Hakkinen. 8th in the championship with a win at Donington and 4 other podium places at Interlagos, Imola, Suzuka and Adelaide. And 7th in the championship, Hakkinen was on 34 points. Also on 34 points was compatriot JJ Lehto. He had 2 wins at Monaco Magny-Cours and a 2nd at Spa. And 6th in the championship was Lehto's teammate Karl Wendlinger. 1 win at Hockenheim, but 5 other podium finishes. Then they came at Donington, Imola, Barcelona, and Montreal and Estoril. 5th in the championship was Ayrton Senna with 2 wins and 2 lost wins. His 2 actual wins came at Kyalami and Estoril. 2 more podium finishes at Suzuka and Adelaide. 4th in the Drivers' Championship. Should have done the points beforehand. Wendlinger had 38 points, Senna had 40. And 42 points was Rubens Barrichello in 4th in the championship. 1 win at Monza, and then 4 second places at Donington, Monaco, Magny-Cours and Hockenheim. Also on 42 points was Gerhard Berger, and his 3 wins came at Interlagos, Barcelona and Montreal. His 3 wins, that was the most any one driver had that season. Berger's other 2 podiums came at Monza and Kyalami. So Berger on 42 points. On 44 points and 2nd in the championship was Riccardo Patrese. His 2 wins at Imola and Suzuka. And there was only 2 wins of his career. But he may have more the further back we go. 5 other podium finishes, Kyalami and Interlagos, Monaco, Spa and Monza. And then winning the championship was Alessandro Zanardi. All that thought because Frentzen and Senna are on particularly good laps. Frentzen was about a quarter of a second up on his personal best through the first sector, and I think it looks like half a second up at the second sector point, so this looks like a good lap for Frentzen as he crosses the line to go 10th on a 1:14.941, but Ayrton Senna crossing the line, does he go quickest? He does. Ayrton Senna 1/10 of a second quicker than Pierluigi Martini, so the Gajera goes up to the front, and that bodes well. Certainly if they do aerodynamic development for this season, because Gajera had no money at all for aero development. They just have a genius driver at the wheel, and works Renault engines thanks to Eric Comas. Some more drivers exiting the pits as Nigel Mansell goes through the second sector point. E5 is Nige. A 1:14 point. It looks like a 4:62. Could be wrong on that one. This certainly isn't a improvement on his current best lap. He crosses the line to 1:15.003. It's possible that you might not be able to see the dev panel at the top. You can see it on the screen that I've got in front of me, but the live stream, it may be cropped out at the top. Anyway, back to that 1993 season, because there were one more driver to cover. World champion Alessandro Zanardi. Didn't get off to the best start that season. He took him until Donington to score points. That was a 5th place. Then 2 more non-scores at Imola and Barcelona. Then, from Monaco onwards, he got into his stride. He had a 4th, and then his maiden podium at Montreal, and then 3 more at Magny-Cours, Hockenheim and Spa, and then Spa, that was his first win, and another 5th place at Monza before a 3rd at Estoril. A retirement at Suzuka, his only retirement that season, although he wasn't running at the end of the Spanish Grand Prix. And then Australia, he was 9 points behind Riccardo Patrese going into that race, and I think he was 5th in the championship. Yes, he was, 35 points. But winning the race rocketed him up to the top with 45 points. Before, unfortunately, he's not got a drive. Michael Schumacher's on a good lap, by the way. Currently P6, but this lap could see him rocket up to P2 in the standings, depending on how well he does in the final couple of corners. Shake and Bake's budget for aero, not much. There's about 2 or 3 credits remaining, but doesn't seem to be affecting Schumacher as he goes 3rd. So behind Senna and Martini. A good lap nonetheless in the Shake and Bake. Could be a championship contender, could be an outside shot of the championship. In a way, I am expecting Senna to walk it because he has got that Works Renault engine, which is a blisteringly powerful engine. And Senna is Senna. We move to Olivier Panis. I think he'd set a personal best lap to go 11th. As Mansell is on a long run at the moment, just getting some laps in, some data for himself as he gets used to the FJR team. Rubens Barrichello in 9th at the moment. And Ayrton Senna about to complete another lap. He's a quarter of a second off of his personal best at that point. He is the fastest driver at the moment. You watched the brilliant German Michael Schumacher go around the final corner. As mentioned, the 1992 champion. Also won the 96 and 98 championships. 96 was with Aquino Plus. And then 98 was with the Dodgem team. Just scrolling through the order at the moment, and the last at the moment is the Tilsley of Johnny Herbert. At the moment it is Herbert 22nd, Blundell 21st in the Goomba, and then the Shake and Bake of Taki Inui 20th. As Michael Schumacher goes through the chicane. Now, Olivier Panis, through the first sector, he's a 10th off of his personal best, 3/10 off of Ayrton Senna. And by the way, it's Gabriele Tarquini in 19th in the other Goomba. Meanwhile, 18th at the moment, if I scroll back, is Roland Ratzenberger. 17th is Martin Brundle. 16th is Jos Verstappen. 15th is Eric Comas. 14th is Gerhard Berger. 13th is Damon Hill, so he's the highest of the Mitchells. 12th is Heinz Harald Frentzen. 11th is Olivier Panis, the driver we're looking at the moment. Irvine in 10th in the Tornado, so we've got both Tornadoes in the top 10 at the moment. So around this circuit anyway, it looks as if the aero package is working, just that the Ford engine needs a little bit more power. Rubens Barrichello is 9th, Mika Hakkinen is 8th, so he's the highest of the 2 Willows. I was expecting Willows to be up there in the championship order, but it does look as if they've got a bit of work to do. Overall, I'd say, the engine and the aero. There are quizzes coming up, so that's your opportunity to develop your cars. David Coulthard, 7th at the moment. He's half a second off of Ayrton Senna. 6th is Nigel Mansell in the highest of the FJRs. 5th is Gianni Morbidelli in the Andrew. Then 4th is Jean Lacey in the CBA Racing. 3rd is Michael Schumacher in the Shake and Bake. 2nd, Pierluigi Martini. Then he's a 10th off of Ayrton Senna, who is the way with a 1 minute 14.123. On board with Gerhard Berger, let's have a watch of his lap at the moment and see how it compares to his previous best. Up the hill towards turn 4. 100th up on his personal best. 2/10 down on Senna. Through the 6 and 7 chicane. The Nannini chicane. And through the Baumgartner S's. Left and right. And this left doesn't have a name, or rather I've not thought of one yet, but this one does actually have a name in real life. It's the Alesi corner. He had a spectacular crash during the 1995 real-life qualifying session. The other corner that does have a name is turn 3, that's the Nigel Mansell peak, named after his spectacular overtake on Senna and Johansson. Where does this lap from Gerhard Berger put him? Goes from 14th to 13th, one place up. 14.911, so he's now in the 14s as well. Let's shift to Johnny Herbert, who's looking to improve his lap time of 1 minute 15.727, 1.6 seconds off of Ayrton Senna. Herbert in a Benetton. That was in real life. But in this world, he's in a Tilsley. And running a customer Mugen engine. So I'm just trying to remember, I think it was 287 kilometres an hour, which was the speed going into turn 1 from a Renault engine, I believe. Good to see if on board with Herbert, see what his top speed is. You can see, here we go. Into the first corner, and it is a 285. It just about nudged there. So, Mugen Honda engine isn't too bad compared to the Renault engine. And I'll do a quick check of his Tilsley's leftover budget to make sure what he had. The first sector, he is nearly 2/10 up on his personal best as he goes through Irvine corner. Was when Eddie Irvine ran wide during the real-life 1999 race, and actually might have cost him the Drivers' Championship if Schumacher let him through at Suzuka, which he would have done. Big improvement, actually, nearly half a second up through the middle sector, so Johnny Herbert is going to rocket up the order with this effort. Could be ahead of Gerhard Berger, I think, in 13th place. Could be even further up than that if he does an even better final sector. But exiting the final corner, what does he do? 15th place, so 1 minute 15.033, so not quite breaking into the 1 minute 14s. Certainly a better place to be than 22nd and last. Tilsley had 26 credits left over, so a decent aero package, and I think if they develop their engine, then they could get themselves up there. Hill, that was P5 is Hill, he must have done that a couple of minutes ago. So now Damon Hill and the Mitchell showing some pace, and Mitchell, they've had a good leftover budget for aero because 25 credits going towards their aero package. I've got it in front of me now. So Tornado had the most with 37. Andrew had 34. Then next was Gumba with 32. So if they focus on the Yamaha engine, then they might be able to avoid finishing last in the championship. Next was Tilsley with 26 and Mitchell with 25. Then a little jump to CDA with 18 credits remaining, but they have got the Works Renault engine, which will more than make up for any aero shortfall. And then an even bigger jump than that to 6 FJR. That's how much budget they had left over to go into their aero. If Mansell isn't too bad at the moment, then FJR, if they get their quizzes right, quiz questions correct, then Mansell might be able to do something. 3 credits left over, that was Willows, then 2 credits left over Shake and Bake, and no credits remaining were Gajera and Pedersen. Doesn't seem to have done Senna much harm, so if Gajera decide to develop aero, then I do suspect that Senna could walk the championship, but stranger things have happened in FF1M. Denardi's a world champion. Martin Brundle, not improving on his personal best at the moment. See how his final sector does. In whiff of a slipstream, perhaps? Probably not. He's going to round the final 2 corners anyway. In a deer of 104 kilometres an hour through the penultimate corner, and then a low speed of 133 through the final hairpin. But no improvement for Martin Brundle, sits 20th, 1.2 seconds off of Ayrton Senna. Hakkinen currently in the top 10. Irvine 12th. Roland Ratzenberg is up to 10th. I missed that one. Roland Ratzenberg and now both Mitchells in the top 10. So now we're seeing the effect of the aero coming into play through the twists and turns of the Hungaroring. That's nice to see the Austrian up there in his debut season. There's the driver in second at the moment. Pierluigi Martini running the famous number 27 Ferrari liveried car. Does have a Ferrari engine, so that sort of makes sense, but in this world, Andrew likes things very Italian. So, what sort of lap time can Martini do here? The second corner. Must admit I missed the top speed of Martini's run into the first corner. I'll catch up on retrospective to see what it was. At the moment he is less than a tenth down on Senna. He's more than a tenth down on his personal best. It was 289 kilometres an hour that Martini did down the main straight. The second sector points goes Martini, and losing a little bit more time, so no improvement scheduled for Martini, so he's just going to hot up some laps, gather a bit more data for his Andrew Racing car. And team boss Andrew Pryor is pretty pleased with his progress. And the car looks good. It's been a very clean session, I have to say, at the moment. We've not seen any drivers make mistakes, and Hungaroring is almost famous for that. Many a season where drivers have totaled it going through a lacy corner. Morbidelli is starting a flying lap. Even in the GP4 days, you see plenty of incidents. 2015 race, for instance, that was mayhem. Drivers going off left, right and centre. Sebastian Vettel went off a minimum of 4 times, could have been 5. Morbidelli's first sector is half a tenth off of his personal best, over a tenth off of Senna's quickest. With the Nannini chicane goes Morbidelli as he catches up to... Is it a Willows that he's catching up to? Well, Andrew have the car to catch up to it. Through the Inui, right-hander of turn 12. That will be named after Taki Inui's famous incident in the 1995 race where he got run over by a safety car. And rounding the final corner, I think it is a Willows that Morbidelli is catching up to. See the slipstream effect as he goes half a second slower than Senna on this lap. But through the first corner, catching up nicely to Martin Brundle. Aquini's dropped down to last, by the way. As Morbidelli looks to do something about Brundle, but Tarquini going on to a lap. This is his first lap out of the pits. And by the way, in that slipstream, Morbidelli hit 296 kilometers an hour. Yeah, 297 actually. I just double checked that. That Ferrari engine looks good. Yamaha engine less so. Tarquini 1,000th of a second off of his personal best through the first sector. You never know, his middle sector could be pretty good. Let's have a look as he rounds the Baumgartner S's. 6,000ths off of his personal best, so could still improve on his lap time. But he needs a pretty good final few corners through Inui and through the unnamed turn 13 and the similarly so turn 14. Famous Hungarian racing drivers. This is on a postcard. Tarquini did improve. He was half a tenth quicker than his personal best, but remains rooted in 22nd. Interesting helmet design that Tarquini's got. It's almost dartboard-esque or cobweb-esque. The octagonal lines going through round the circle. Yeah, it does look quite dartboardish. Tarquini's top speed was 280 kilometers an hour through the main straight. So 9 down from a Ferrari engine without slipstream. And 4, by the way, that's either Massa or Thurman corner. Take your pick. So Tarquini a second off of Senna on this particular lap. Pretty tricky corner, that turn 12. You do see quite a few mistakes going through there. In the 2013 race, I seem to remember quite a few drivers went off. That was a pretty chaotic wet race, which saw a very miserable time for FJR. I seem to remember like Hamilton starting on the wrong tyres, then pitting, then losing his rear wing, and then one lap later teammate Esteban Gutierrez went off, crashed out of the race. Yeah, that was a bad one. Queue of cars, very briefly, as Donald Lacey on his out lap. Could have a very good season this time with CBA. Lacey is a race winner. He won the 1989 Italian Grand Prix, which I seem to remember was another chaotic one. Big queue of cars, by the way, was Comas, Frentzen and Coulthard. No improvement in lap times to be expected there. So Jean Lacey is going to start a flying lap. And we can actually see the timing screens, by the way, so I've got it on a separate screen. Tarquini, Brundle, this is going from bottom to top. Tarquini, Brundle, Inouye, Comas, Blundell, Verstappen, Herbert, Frentzen, Berger, Panis, Irvine, Barrichello, Ratzenberger, Hakkinen, Coulthard, Mansell, Morbidelli, Alesi, Schumacher, Hill, Martini and Senna. Yeah, that was a good lap from Damon Hill to get up to third in the Ford-powered Mitchell. Aero certainly helping out there. I'm just trying to figure out who looks good out of all those runners. Well, yeah, obviously I have to look at the top ones. There's potential in some of the other teams, such as CBA, their works Renault, and a healthy slug of aero development, and a fiery young Frenchman in a fiery young French lineup, Jean Lacey and Olivier Panis. Lacey not improving on his current lap. Will complete it anyway. 1.5 tenths off of his best at the moment. Vincent's on an improvement. Showing green in the first 2 sectors. Screen I'm watching, I do have the head-up panel. He was 3 tenths off of Senna in going through the middle sector. Let's see what this lap time does for Heinz Harald. He moves up to 11th. 1.5 tenths up on his personal best. He was actually 4 tenths slower and only 3/10 slower than Senna through that final sector. But it does show that FJR do have a little bit of aero work to do. Maybe team boss James Brickles will do so, maybe he won't. Only time will tell. Thomas is coming into the pits at the end of this lap. David Coulthard not on an improvement at the moment. We're nearly an hour into the session, and it's been an exceedingly clean session, I have to say. Mansell's top speed, 286 kilometers an hour, so the Mercedes engine in the back of the FJR about 3 kilometers slower compared to the Ferrari engine in the back of the Andrew and the Pedersen. And no doubt the Shake and Bake will be emitting a similar top speed. Mansell's first sector, he is 100th of a second slower than his personal best. And Nige is in 7th place at the moment. And keep an eye on that nose box as well, running at red 2. Famously it was red 5, but it's FJR running 0 and 2. It's the red 2. Second sector for Nige is 700ths down on his personal best, so this doesn't look to be an improvement. Keep an eye on that gap between Mansell and Senna, between the second and third sectors. It was a quarter of a second off of Senna through the middle sector. And this final sector will give you a clue as to how much aero work the FJR do need to do, because Mansell lost a 1/10 and a half actually compared to Senna in the end. Ayrton Senna is starting his first lap out of the pits. Finished his out lap, should I say, first flying lap. Underneath the Cannon brick wall bridge, and then through the second corner, Hamilton Bend, into Mansell Corner. And about to complete sector 1. 100th off, and it was 287 kilometers an hour, the top speed down the main straight. 288 actually. The Renault engine is a kilometre an hour slower than the Ferrari. So we don't see reliability take effect in test sessions as much. We did have one breakdown in Paul Ricard, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It was either Johnny Herbert or one of the Willows. I'm not 100% sure on that. Senna's improving on his own personal best. There's a good middle sector. So this looks like a lap which could extend the gap between himself and Martini. Down in the final corner, and about to complete a lap which is 12 thousandths quicker than his personal best. Senna lowers the benchmark to 1 minute 14.111. Anybody else on a lap? Well, Barrichello's just completing his. Frentzen about to complete another. Now, Michael Schumacher, currently 4th in the Shake and Bake Mercedes. Customer Mercedes. He's on a 1 minute 14.266. Ultimate corner. And of course, Schumacher gunning for a 4th championship out of sequence, because he won 2 more championships after the 1994 season. Schumacher holds a pretty distinct record in FF1M. He won his first FF1M race, the 1991 United States Grand Prix at Phoenix, and he won his last ever FF1M race, the 2006 Brazilian Grand Prix. So bookending his career with a win apiece. First race victory, then roughly 200 races later, winning his final race. I will just have a quick look at the statistics to find out how many races Schumacher did, not including this season, and I'm pretty sure he'll be driving in 1995 as well, once that season comes across. He's completing his second sector, and it's not improving on his personal best at the moment, so at the moment just totting up some more laps. So Schumacher has done 217 races so far. 14 races this season. Then likely to be 14 more races in 1995. So once they're done, Schumacher will have done 245 FF1M races. I should probably go through the calendar actually. It'll be a 14 race season as mentioned before, and it will kick off at the Brazilian Grand Prix at the Autodromo José Carlos Pache circuit at Interlagos, or commonly known as Interlagos. Then we'll be moving over to Japan for round 2 with the Pacific Grand Prix, the first FF1M race to take part at the PI circuit Aida. It looks a very technical circuit with not many in the long straights department. Got the one long straight going into the right hand hairpin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn 6-ish. They do have corner names, but I've not memorised them yet. 3 is at Monaco. Round 4 is at Barcelona. Round 5 at Montreal. Round 6 at Magny-Cours. Round 7 at Silverstone, so the British Grand Prix moving from Donington back to Silverstone. The German Grand Prix is next at Hockenheim. The Belgian Grand Prix round 9 at Spa. Round 10 at Monza. Round 11 at Estoril. Round 12 the European Grand Prix at Jerez. And then the final 2 races, Suzuka and Adelaide. Let's go through those pretty quickly because Olivier Panis is on a flying lap. Where's this going to put the Frenchman? Goes up to... It says second. I think that is correct because Ayrton Senna is still top, but that was a great lap from Olivier Panis. In fact, I think we may need a reset because Ayrton Senna's fastest lap time should be a 1 minute 14.111. Something's gone a little bit interesting in the timing sheets. Panis, I think, is supposed to be second with a 1 minute 14.168. Martini third, Hill fourth, Schumacher fifth, Alesi sixth. Yeah, just ignore the Senna's lap time with 1 minute 14.265. That was a previous lap. Senna should be on a 1 minute 14.111. I'll do my best to relate that. Yep, Senna fastest at the moment with Panis moving up to second. Martini third, 1 minute 14.225. Hill next on a 1:14.237. Michael Schumacher next, 14.266. Alesi, a 1 minute 14.357. Morbidelli, 14.391. Ansel, 14.462. Coulthard, 14.688. Hakkinen, 14.711. Ratzenberger, 14.807 in 11th place. Frentzen, 1,000th behind on a 14.808. Barrichello, 14.812. Or is Eddie Irvine supposed to be higher up because he might have set himself a pretty good lap time on a 14.715. That is fresh off the box. So Irvine moving up to 11th. Berger, 14.911. Johnny Herbert, 15.033. Verstappen, 15.066. And Blundell, 15.079. Comas, 15.146. Nui, 15.464. Brundle, 15.476. And Tarquini, 15.549. And the timing chart in front of me has just been kindly updated to reflect Eddie Irvine's move up to 11th place. And Olivier Panis's lap has been nicely acknowledged by the CBA Racing team boss. As we shift attention to Gerhard Berger, who is on a pretty decent lap at the moment. He does a 1 minute 14.855. That's an improvement in lap time, but not in position. And remains in 15th place. There's the timing sheet disruptor, Eddie Irvine. Currently in P11. Damon Hill P4 at the moment, as out of the pits comes his teammate, Roland Ratzenberger. And Gerhard Berger coming into the pits as well on this lap. So Ratzenberger just behind Eddie Irvine. Or is that Damon Hill? It's certainly one of the two Mitchells. Missing Eddie Irvine. It's Damon Hill, actually. So, two Brits, line astern. Hill from Hampstead in London. And Eddie Irvine from Conleague. Somewhere in Ireland. So as Damon Hill is about to complete another lap chasing Eddie Irvine, I will take a quick break in commentary and we'll be back in a moment. And I've rejoined to see Taki Inui go up to 17th place. 1 minute 14.8, so good lap from the Japanese driver. At least it moves him out of 20th place anyway. Now we see Jos Verstappen about to complete a lap. His best of 1 minute 14.8, currently in 15th place. Just remember that Senna's best lap time is 14.111, not a 265. Just a minor graphical glitch. Martini in 3rd place at the moment. He's on his out lap and about to start a flying lap. See if he can usurp Senna from the top of the timesheet. Let's take you around the Hungaroring actually. So on board with Martini as he tops 290 kilometres an hour just about through hill/PK corner. Scene of 2 great overtakes from the 2 champions in real life, and then through Hamilton left, and then the Mansell right of turn 3. The circuit used to go a little bit more to the right, another couple of hairpins and a right-hand hairpin, left-hand hairpin, then the right-hand kink to rejoin what the circuit is now. That was because there was an underground river that they discovered during construction, and they had to divert that temporarily for 3 seasons. Just going through the Baumgartner S's now as Martini crosses the 2nd sector beam and is a 10th off of his best. So this doesn't look as if he's going to improve, but in any case, Martini is showing some good pace in the Andrew. A low speed of 105 kilometres an hour through the penultimate corner. And then a low speed of 134-ish, mostly 135 through the final corner. Martini crosses the line as a 14.4, so that is nearly 2/10 off of his personal best. There were some more corners that I'd missed out, but anywho, that was Brundle and Inui completing laps as Morbidelli is starting his first flying lap out of the pits. Through Hamilton Bend, and in FF1M we do see cars running side by side through there. There's been some good battles among drivers over the seasons. And Morbidelli about a 10th off of his personal best as he goes through Hill Massa/Furman corner, now exiting Irvine corner and into the Nannini chicane. Floating the curbs to make sure you take the shortest run through the chicane, then keep to the left before turning right for the exit of the Baumgartner S's, flat out left kink through the 2nd sector through a Lacey bend. Lots of FF1M races have seen lots of crashes, particularly in the olden GP3 days. In fact, that first corner saw probably the most spectacular corner crash collision of them all between Jarno Trulli in the Dark Wolf, BMW engined in the back of that, colliding with Gary Paffett in the Venture Toyota, and Paffett ended up doing a helicopter impression into the tyre barrier. Morbidelli completed his lap as Tarquin is on his outlap with Damon Hill, running his petrol quite low before coming into the pits. Hakkinen completing a flying lap, and it was about a 10th slower than his personal best. Hakkinen currently in 10th in the Willows, Mugen Honda. And coming up to Furman Massa corner, you see quite a lot of drivers making mistakes at the exit of that corner. It's easy to carry too much speed through the apex from wide and then sometimes spin, sometimes carrying straight and losing only time and maybe a few positions if you've got somebody right up your chuff. The 2016 race, we did see Alonso spin and crash out of that turn 4 corner. It was collected by Sergio Perez, I think it was, and Perez lucky to get away without any damage. Here's another brief look at the timing sheets. Not much change since the last time. And at the bottom there, Gabriele Tarquini in the Gumba. But he is on an improvement on this lap. He is around the final corner, so could this get him out of last place? He's got 700ths gap between himself and Brundle. And he does even better than that. He goes up to 19th place. So good effort from Tarquini. Moves up ahead of Brundle, Comas and Blundell. So now it's up to Brundle and Comas to make sure that they are within a second of Ayrton Senna's quickest lap. Tarquini did a 15.058 that time. Tenths of a second slower in the first sector compared to Senna. A lot of that will be down to that Yamaha engine, which isn't as powerful as the Renault, certainly not as powerful as the Ferrari engine. So evidence suggests that Renault and Ferrari are very close together. Then Tier 2 in the engine lists appears to be between Mercedes and Ford. Maybe Mercedes do have the edge of Ford, but Ford's, their two teams' aero package is flattering them a little bit. Because Paul Ricard, the Ford engine, certainly wasn't as quick as the Mercedes engine. And then Mugen Honda, probably the 5th most powerful engine, and then Yamaha, the least powerful engine, it seems. Roland Ratzenberger is who you're looking at the moment on the screen. And he's currently in 12th place, 1,000th of a second quicker than Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the FJR. But the Mitchell of Ratzenberger crosses the line, and he's just totting up the laps at the moment because he was 2 seconds off of Senna that time. 1.4 seconds slower than his own personal best. Through Mansell corner goes Roland. As mentioned, this will be his first season in FF1M. Comes from Salzburg. Very much a late bloomer in the world of FF1M. He's making his debut at the tender young age of 33 years old. Born on Independence Day, 4th of July. And will be turning 34 in this universe after the French Grand Prix, one day after the French Grand Prix. Just for a little bit of amusement, I'm going to see if any FF1M driver on this current grid has a birthday on the same day as one of the races that will be taking part in this fictitious universe. So Frentzen on the 18th of May, that will be shortly after the Monaco Grand Prix, where he will turn 27th. And now Ratzenberger's head-up display is showing a red circle. It does normally mean that there's a mechanical problem, but he's also low on fuel, so I think that is actually what that represents. So Ratzenberger low on fuel, and about to come into the pits at the end of this lap to have his tanks topped up, and a fresh set of Goodyears put on his Mitchell. Mansell, one of the oldest drivers on the grid, and he will be turning 41 years old shortly, so in between the German and Belgian Grand Prix. And Michael Schumacher, I know he was born in January, and 1969, will already be 25 in this season. His teammate's a bit older than him, I think. Taki Inui. And he'll be turning 31 shortly after in between the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix. He'll be turning 31. Johnny Herbert. So he'll be turning 30 years old. In between the Canadian and the French Grand Prix. Seeing if anybody's on a flying lap. Well, Frenson's on an out lap, so it'll be interesting to see if he improves on his lap time of a 1:14.808. Verstappen, one of the younger drivers on this grid. And he'll be turning, when will he be turning? 4th of March 1972. He'll be turning 22 before the first race, Brazil. Ayrton Senna, born in 1960, March 21st, 6 days before the Brazilian Grand Prix. So that's when he'll be turning 34. Eric Kermas. He's next up on the roster. 28th of September. 3 days after the Portuguese Grand Prix, he'll be turning 31. And that's not an improvement for Heinz-Harald Frentzen on this lap. 1.5 tenths down on his personal best, so just be gaining some more laps and experience in the FJR. Ready for that first race of the season at Interlagos. Martini will be turning 32 a few weeks before the Brazilian Grand Prix. Next on the roster, Mark Blundell. And he'll be turning 28 in between the Brazilian and Pacific Grand Prix. Eamon Hill. He was born in 1960, so he's one of the elder statesmen on the grid. And he'll be turning 34 in between the Italian and Portuguese Grand Prix. Frentzen completing a lap, and it'll be a lap just to gain some more experience. He'll be continuing for the moment. I think I'd already covered Ratzenberger, 4th of July. That's the day after the French Grand Prix, turning 34. Jean Lacey, his birthday was usually around the Canadian Grand Prix. And in fact, it'll be the day before the Canadian Grand Prix where he'll turn 30. So plenty of drivers approaching their 30s or in their 30s. Ansel's the oldest driver on the grid. I'm trying to remember who is the youngest. I think it is Rubens Barrichello, who is the youngest driver on the grid. It's not Olivier Panis, but who will turn 28 in between the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix. Gerhard Berger, the second oldest driver on the grid. And he will be turning 35 the day before the Belgian Grand Prix. Rubens Barrichello, the youngest one on the grid. I think it's sometime in May. Indeed it is, and it's between the Monaco and the Spanish Grand Prix. He'll be turning 22 years old, so at this very moment, he is 21. David Coulthard. His birthday is on the Brazilian Grand Prix. He'll be turning 23 years old. That's a nice little one for DC. Eddie Irvine. And his birthday is between the Japanese and the Australian Grand Prix. He'll be turning 29 years old in this season. Pierluigi Martini, I think one of the more experienced drivers on the grid. He spent a season with Autodynamics in 1988, one season in Unbearable GP, that was the one-off team for 1989, got 2 points, and then 2 seasons with Andrew Racing in 1990 and 1991, and a year out before rejoining Andrew for 1993, and he's remained with the team in 94. Scrolling through the order, as you can see, Ayrton Senna currently on a lap that's not improving, but currently P1. I think the graphics have now sorted themselves out, because showing up on a 1 minute 14.111. Once he completes the second sector and once he goes through the final couple of corners to then reveal the graphic for the remaining lap time. There it is. Yep, the graphics have fixed themselves. And the top 5 separated by less than 0.2 of a second. So that's pretty good going if we're expecting a competitive season. That's the birthdays. Martini will be celebrating his 33rd birthday between the Pacific and Monaco Grand Prix. Gianni Morbidelli, one of the younger drivers on the grid. He'll already be 26 at this point, as he was born in January. Mika Hakkinen next up, and he'll be celebrating his 26th birthday after the Portuguese Grand Prix. And lastly, Martin Brundle. I think he was born in the 50s. Well, he's currently last in the order at the moment. He's an improvement if he's going to avoid the wooden spoon of this session. He's turning 35. When will he be turning 35? That'll be between the Spanish and the Canadian Grand Prix. So one driver has a birthday on a race, and that is David Coulthard. I have the answer to my exceedingly silly question. Back to the actual stuff as we look at Jean Lacey. 6th place at the moment, and he's a 1/4 of a second off of Senna's personal best, which is the fastest time at the moment. Lacey's best first sector, that is just shy of 1/10 of a second off of Senna's best first sector. Both CBA racings in the top 6, but it's been a good session for the Yorkshire team. And a team that is distinctly, you can just about catch the faint whiff of a used Gitane cigarette. It is that French. Just round in the final corner now is Lacey. And it's not an improvement, but in any case, it is another lap for the Frenchman, the French Sicilian. I'm pretty sure the CBA team racing boss will be encouraged by his performance so far, and the potential to do a little bit more depending on how many answers he gets correct in the quizzes which are coming up. There'll be a pre-season quiz before the first race, which will be taking place on Saturday, I believe. There may be commentary, may not be, depending on how available I am, but if there is, then you might be hearing this voice again. You might be hearing another voice. As we continue to watch Lacey completing yet another lap, this will be the end of his 27th lap that he'll be completing. And he's not got much fuel left, so he'll be coming into the pits soon, and he'll be coming in at the end of this particular lap, this in-lap. As we now switch to Lacey's teammate, Olivier Panis. And in the FF1M World, Panis hasn't had much in the way of podiums. He had a couple in the 1996 season. That was with AJ Motorsports. A couple of third places, I think that was. But other than that, he's not had much to play with. It does look as if Panis has got a very competitive CBA under his disposal. So, it'll be interesting to see how he performs. Looking at the tornado of Eddie Irvine as he goes up the hill towards Assa Furman Corner, and first sector just over 1/10 off of his personal best, and his personal best is 2/10 off of Senna's best. as he goes through the Nannini chicane. And the Tornadoes certainly looks a bit better in here compared to Paul Ricard. I think somebody has just gone P12 because Irvine is now down to P13, so I wonder who has set a good lap. It might have been Gerhard Berger, who's up to 9th place. I think so. I think the charts have gone a bit strange again. Or is it somebody in the top 6 because Morbidelli's now down to 7th? No, that's correct. So it's gone back to 14.265. So just ignore that for the moment. I think it was Gerhard Berger who'd made an improvement up to 9th place in the Pedersen. Pedersen, which doesn't have any aero at the moment, has a good Ferrari engine underneath. So it has an interesting rear wing formation. Might see that on some other cars, particularly when we get onto the higher downforce circuits, such as Aida, and also at Monaco. You may see that at Jerez as well, potentially. You certainly won't see that at Hockenheim and Monza, because top speed is everything. Berger coming into the pits at the end of this lap, as Johnny Herbert is on another lap, and Panis is also coming into the pits at the end of this lap. He's done a few laps. So we switch to Roland Ratzenberger starting his first flying lap. He's exiting the pits once again. Let's see what this Austrian driver can do. Powered by a customer Ford engine. It has a solid aero package underneath him. First sector is a couple of tenths pretty much off of his personal best, so Ratzenberger's just going to put up some more laps and, like the rest of the field, gain some more experience. Nearly 4 tenths off of his personal best through the end of the first 2 sectors, and then just the one more sector to go before completing his lap. I'm just going to have a look at the Paul Ricard times, actually, the Paul Ricard order, just to quickly recap how that went for everyone. Was topped by Pierluigi Martini in the Andrew, and he nearly broke into underneath 61 seconds on that short variant. It was a 1 minute 1.839 that Martini set. Barrichello was second, basically a quarter of a second off of Martini in the end. Ayrton Senna was third, Gianni Morbidelli was fourth, Olivier Panis was fifth, Nigel Mansell was sixth, and it was Schumacher, Alesi, Berger and Inouye completing the top 10. It's Harold Frentzen was 11th ahead of Eric Comas, and David Coulthard was 13th ahead of Johnny Herbert, and Herbert's teammate 15th. Ross Verstappen, that would have been. The Irvine in the other Tornado was 16th, and Mika Hakkinen, Damon Hill, Roland Ratzenberg and Martin Brundle, Gabriele Tarquini and Mark Blundell completing the 22 order. And Blundell's best time was nearly 2 seconds off of Martini's best effort. He also completed the fewest laps as well, only 28 compared to Martini's 40, and certainly compared to Senna's 48. By far the most laps completed, but unlike in the normal seasons, number of laps doesn't matter. It's a measure of how good your car is at the moment. And last place Martin Brundle, looking for an improvement, and he is improving on his current best lap so far. Let's see what he can do exiting the final corner. It's only a modest improvement. He remains 22nd as a result. 1 minute 15.315, 1.204 seconds off of Ayrton Senna. Who else is improving? Nobody at the moment. Morbidelli is on an outlap. Is he going to usurp Senna off the top? Find out in about 1.5 minutes' time. No mechanical failures, no offs so far in this session, so all been very clean so far. Watch me curse somebody as a result. Starting new lap is Gianni Morbidelli. Next in the first corner, that was nice and clean for the Italian. In first sector so far for Gianni Morbidelli. And that's an improvement on his personal best, so unless he can do 2 good middle sectors, well, the middle sector and the final sector, then Morbidelli looks rooted in 7th for the moment. Not long of this session to go, roughly half an hour. It is still Ayrton Senna topping the timesheets at the moment. Morbidelli going through the second sector, 1.5 tenths slower than his personal best. I expect that to grow to around 1/4 of a second once the final sector has been completed. A low speed of 105 kilometers an hour through the penultimate corner. And then 133. I just saw it nudge there. The final corner, Morbidelli does a 1 minute 14.603. That's half a second off of Senna's and 2 tenths off of his personal best. Martini completing a lap, and that was not too bad, a 1 minute 14.345. No improvement on his personal best, but again, showing that the Andrew is a very competitive car, it seems, this season. You can see the high sides on the cockpit of the Willows there, giving the driver a little bit more protection. And at the moment, Häkkinen on a 1 minute 14.711, exactly 6 tenths off of Senna's best of a 1 minute 14.111. So 6 tenths is the gap between first and 12th. And the whole field separated by 1 second. Over 1 second, 1.2 seconds actually. As Häkkinen goes on to a flying lap. And I neglected to see what the top speed was. I've got another screen in front of me so that can tell me. Going through Mansell Corner goes Häkkinen. In retrospect, his top speed was 284 kilometers an hour. So that is 5-6 kilometers an hour slower than the Ferrari. Häkkinen has improved on his first sector by just a fraction. If he continues on that, he could break into the top 10. So rounding second sector points, he's actually dropped time. So he's now half a tenth slower than his personal best. So Häkkinen's lap time looks to be as it is at the moment. I'm just going to take a quick look at the projected schedule for this classic season. So running as is, the Brazilian Grand Prix will be taking place on Saturday the 26th. This is scheduled, and it could due to change. Anyway, 26th Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos, then the 27th, the Sunday at Aida. Then we've got the first of the mid-season quizzes, and they'll be focused on Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. So that'll be a brief break before the 3rd of May, the Monaco Grand Prix, then the day after Barcelona Spanish Grand Prix, then Monday the 5th, that'll be the Canadian Grand Prix at Montreal, Then a little break before the first proper mid-season quiz to develop your cars. For the 10th, the Saturday the 10th of May, French Grand Prix, and then Sunday the 11th at Silverstone. And then another break before the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim at the 17th of May. Then the 18th of May, the Belgian Grand Prix. And another mid-season quiz period before the 24th of May on Saturday, the Italian Grand Prix. The day after, the 25th of May, will be at the Portuguese Grand Prix at Estoril. And then Monday the 26th, the European Grand Prix at Jerez. Then Saturday the 31st of May, that will be at the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. And in the final race, 1st of June, the Australian Grand Prix at Adelaide. Always a favourite. Scene of Mansell's championship win in 88, Zanardi's at 93 and Schumacher's at 92. Have there been any others that were decided at Adelaide? A few teams championships. The 89, that was decided at Adelaide. That was Ayrton Senna's second championship. He'd won in 87 with, I think it was the Guy Racing team, as they were known back then. And then the 89 season, that was Darkfire. That was Darkfire's only championship, Ixolite's only championship win. As up the inside of, I think it's Taki Inui, goes Jean Lacey. That was his first, and barges the Japanese out of the way, so Lacey, I think he was looking for a hot lap, but being held up by Inui. Let's see what his first sector is anyway. At 10th and a half off of his personal best. See what his second sector's like to compare. Because if it's faster than 1.5 tenths off, then yeah, Lacey could have been setting a pretty good lap if it wasn't for Inui. Rounding that second sector point, and it was actually an improvement. So he halved the deficit between his previous personal best. So yeah, I think Inui has prevented Lacey from setting a very hot lap. See what this lap time is anyway as he rounds the final corner. Good minimum speed through there, 137, as Lacey crosses the line. And he's improved on his best lap. It remains 6th. So if it wasn't for Inui, it cost him about best part of a 10th and a half, then Lacey could have been setting a very, very good lap time that may have been threatening Senna's 1 minute 14.111. See what this first sector's like in reference, but yeah, Lacey 2 tenths off in the end. Yeah, Inui cost him about a 10th and a half, so if it wasn't for that, then Lacey would have been moving up to around Olivier Panis's lap time. See if this is an improvement, or continues to be an improvement. Remember, it was about a 10th and a half through the first sector, which Lacey was quicker than his previous best. That's now dropped to about 0.04 of a second. So the tyres degrading by, let's call it 2 tenths a lap. 1 to 2 tenths a lap. That's in spite of the fuel load. Can Lacey improve on his personal best on this effort? Oh, that is 0.03 down on his personal best in the end. "15 minutes of this session to go now as Komas holds up Mika Hakkinen, who's coming into the pits at the end of this lap. Still an improvement on his personal best in the first sector, but the tyres will continue to degrade as his run continues. Cannon, this will be CBA Racing's second season. And yep, the team boss acknowledging that Lacey was in for a good one then. Still showing green at the end of the second sector, but you do need the grip in the final couple of corners in this final sector. Maybe in the final 15 to 10 minutes, somebody can bolt on a new set of tyres and then go for an absolute banzai lap as the session concludes. And indeed, it is 14 minutes and 20 seconds now. That's how long there is to go. And we've got some drivers on outlaps, both FJRs going on outlaps. Frentzen 15th and Mansell now down to 10th. Which one of these has got the tyres to perform? Well, Frentzen is first of the FJRs. Mansell is second. And so only one FJR in the top half. And I think that is a legacy of the team needing a bit of aero work in order to be reasonably competitive. So Frentzen on a 14.8. Mansell, I think, was on a 14 point, however many less than that. Mansell's on a 14.462, so 3.5 tenths quicker than Frentzen at the moment, as Frentzen starts a new flying lap. The last lap was some 5 seconds slower than Senna's, so I wonder if at some point Frentzen might have had a little off somewhere on his previous hot lap. Rounding the first couple of corners and into Mansell Bend goes Frentzen, and then Mansell entering a corner named after himself. Frentzen is about half a tenth slower than his personal best. How's Mansell doing? We'll find out in a little moment. The number 0 going through the Nanini chicane, followed by red 2. Mansell's also slower than his personal best, so FJR just putting up some laps. And Mansell a tenth off, whereas Frentzen is still half a tenth off. So unless Heinz Harald can do a nice final sector, then I think he's going to remain in 15th for the moment. And Mansell will remain in P10 for his moment. Next in the final corner goes Heinz Harald Frentzen. And in the end, it's a 1 minute 14.8. Mansell does a 1 minute 14.6. FJR's hitting at 286 kilometres an hour down the main straight. So the engine power best described as not bad. Senna's on a pretty decent lap. He is half a tenth off of his personal best, which is the best at the moment. He's a good final sector if he's going to improve on his best lap. Comas, meanwhile, doing 16.663 lap times. Barrichello was being held up by Tarquini a few moments ago. Lacey continuing on his run as Michael Schumacher is about to start his hot lap. He's fresh out of the pits. You can see the CBA of Lacey in the distance. You can also see similar top speed compared to the Works Mercedes engine FJR. Shake and Bake, remember, running just the customer engine, so not expected to set the world alight in qualifying, but could be decent race pace. It's a decent first sector for Schumacher in the first sector, 9 thousandths off of his own. And he's got that CBA in front of him, through the Nanini chicane. And currently P5 at the moment is Schumacher. Behind Senna, Panis, Martini and the Hill. Second sector in the ballpark. 16 thousandths off of his personal best. May get a faint whiff of his slipstream down the main straight. Lucky. Otherwise, he'll just continue with the final corner. Now, can he do a good last sector to improve on his personal best? Not quite, 700ths off in the end. And now he hits the top speed, 287. It may well have nudged there. Benson coming into the pits. But Mansell going to do another lap as Olivier Panis exits the pits to do what could be his final run. Only got 10 minutes to go now. And Panis going pretty well in the test sessions. 5th quickest in the Paul Ricard test. And 2nd quickest at the moment. 57 thousandths of a second off of Ayrton Senna. Senna, Panis, Martini, Hill, Schumacher and Alesi are the top 6. And it's Morbidelli, Coulthard, Berger, Mansell, Barrichello and Hakkinen. In fact, Mansell just 3.5 tenths off of Senna. Irvine, Ratzenberger, Frentzen, Verstappen, Inouye and Herbert. That's down to 18. All those within a second. Marquini and Blundell also within a second, the two Gungers. Comas 21st and Brundle 1.2 seconds off of Ayrton Senna. Olivier Panis is about to start a new lap. Next in the final corner. If his set of tyres are good, then he could be threatening Senna's top time. 288 down the main straight, so engine not quite running at its optimal range. Maybe they've turned it down a little bit. So about to cross the first sector point is Olivier Panis. That's pretty good. 300ths off of his personal best. Exiting Irvine Bend and into Nannini chicane. There's the Frenchman. Now through the Baumgartner S's. The second sector point comes here, and it is 3/4 of a tenth down on his personal best, so Panis looks as if he's going to remain in second for the moment. We'll wait for the final couple of corners to confirm that. Does a 1 minute 14.263 as Olivier, and that is nearly a tenth off of his personal best as he overtakes one of the Pedersens who is exiting the pits at that point. Is that Berger or is that Barrichello? It's Gerhard Berger, currently in 9th place. The 1:14.426. 3/10 of a second off of Ayrton Senna's best. It'd be interesting to see how quick Berger is compared to Panis on this outlap. Staying with the Frenchman. If Panis is doing 1 minute 14.2s, then Berger could be on for a possible improvement. You can see maybe just there the CBA racing car pulling away a little bit. Interesting to see the steering wheel in this mod. It's not the usual GP4 steering wheel. It's been specially crafted for this 1994 car set, which is quite nice. Berger is staying with Panis. He could be on for an improvement depending on how this lap unfolds. Ferrari engine proving pretty strong, so first sector point, Gerhard Berger is 2 thousandths off of his personal best. Nip and tuck. That Ferrari engine was about 288 kilometers an hour down the main straight. can see the trees lining the circuit on the left there. And trees in the distance. And Berger's lost a bit of time actually through the middle sector. He's a 10th and a half off. So just 5 minutes to go now. And the order looks to be pretty much set. You may see the graphic again coming up soon. And then I'll be able to tell you who has topped the session and who has not topped the session. Which of the other 21 drivers have not topped this session. So far, it's still Ayrton Senna, which was a lap time set midway through. Eamon Hill completing a lap, and Johnny Herbert about to start one. .284 kilometres an hour down the main straight. That's where the Mugen Honda is at the moment. In the days of old, the Honda engine was really, really good. I'll find out actually how many engine trophies it's won. Engine trophy this season being contested by 6 different engines. Ferrari, Renault, Mercedes, Ford, Mugen Honda and Yamaha. The Honda have won a total of, in canon, it is 5 engine trophies. They came in 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990 and 1992, so very successful time of it in this classic format. In between those years, so 1986, that was won by Renault. In 1991, that was won by Ferrari, and then 1993, that was won by Renault. It's a long stint for Mansell, so he's gathering more what should be useful data for FJR, and maybe at the end of this lap he'll complete, and then the end of the one after that, that'll be his in lap. 2 minutes to go, so this is Mansell all set for the session. Looks to be remaining in P10 for the moment. Unless one of the drivers behind improves markedly. He's going to be doing another lap after this one, just to see what he can do. Matt Blundell pitting at the end of this lap, and he's in 20th place. One place behind Gabriele Tarquini. You can see that helmet of Blundell's very unique and pretty much based off the Warner Brothers logo, but with the W flipped around to make the M. Yeah, it's one of those iconic helmets that you tend to miss. And a little fun fact, the Driven film, the main protagonist Jimmy Bly's helmet, that was based off of Mark Blundell's helmet, but with a JB instead of an MB. He switched to the Austrian flag-designed helmet. That belongs to Roland Ratzenberger. As Mansell is going to complete this lap. I'm pretty sure he'll be coming into the pits at the end of this lap because his fuel is running pretty low. Indeed he is. But Mansell had eventually dipped to around 2 seconds slower than Senna. And initially it was half a second off of Senna, so in those 8 laps the tyres degraded quite noticeably. Not sure if anybody's improving now at this stage, so I think we are indeed set for this session. Coming to a close now, so time is up. Drivers can complete this lap and as many laps as they wish. That's the way it works for some reason. You can complete your stint. We may get one last look at the timesheets before we part for the end of this session. And once we do, I'll give you the full order. You can see Mansell coming into the pits as Gerhard Berger continues on for the end of this lap, as does the CBA in front of Olivier Panis. And Berger's going to do another lap. Panis could do another lap as well, probably. I've got the times in front of me. So, first place is Ayrton Senna. Did a 1 minute 14.111 and 40 laps, the most out of anyone. So, a good day overall for Ayrton Senna. Second is the CBA Racing of Olivier Panis, and he lapped nearly over half a tenth off of Senna, and having done 31 laps. Pierluigi Martini in the very competitive Andrew Racing, third, on a 1 minute 14.225, 36 laps completed. Eamon Hill, fourth, 1 minute 14.237, 35 laps. Michael Schumacher, fifth, 14.266, 31 laps. Alesi, sixth, 1 minute 14.332 on 38 laps. The second most out of everyone, jointly held by Gabriele Tarquini. Gianni Morbidelli, seventh in the other Andrews, so both Andrews in the top 7, both CBAs in the top 6. I should have mentioned that first. It's Morbidelli doing a 1 minute 14.391 and 35 laps completed. David Coulthard, 8th, so that's 5 places better compared to Paul Ricard on a 1 minute 14.421, only did 22 laps, the same as Gerhard Berger in 9th. Paul Berger is still continuing, so he is increasing his lap chart for the moment. Berger doing a 1 minute 14.426, 0.315 off of Ayrton Senna. Completing the top 10 is Nigel Mansell in the FJR on a 1 minute 14.462, essentially swapping the last 2 numbers of Berger's lap time. Mansell having done 35 laps, so not too bad. Rubens Barrichello, 11th in the Pedersen, the second of the 2 Pedersen Ferraris, 1 minute 14.579, only having done 24 laps, so Pedersen jointly doing 24 laps each, but Berger will do a little bit more because he's still out on the circuit, as you can see, as is the CBA of Olivier Panis. The Panis also increasing his laps total, but he's coming into the pits now, so Gerhard Berger, I think, is going to be the last one on the circuit. 12th is Mika Hakkinen in the Willows, a 1 minute 14.703, having completed 32 laps. And 13th is the second Tornado of Eddie Irvine, 1 minute 14.715, 35 laps completed. Roland Ratzenberger in the second Mitchell is 10 places behind teammate Hill. He did a 1 minute 14.807, 29 laps completed. 15th, Heinz Harald Frentzen, 1,000th of a second off of Ratzenberger's time, and having completed 33 laps. So good haul of points for FJR overall. In the first of the 2 Tilsleys, Jos Verstappen in 16th, 1 minute 14.826, 30 laps completed. Taki Inui, the second of the 2 Shake and Bakes in 17th, 1 minute 14.890, having done 29 laps. Johnny Herbert, the second of the 2 Tilsleys in 18th, 1 minute 15.033, the first of the drivers having done a lap time in the 75-second barrier. 33 laps completed. And the next 2 are the 2 Gumbers, Gabriele Tarquini ahead of Mark Blundell, and Tarquini did a 15.058, Blundell did a 15.079, and both of those completed a total of 67 laps. And 21st is Eric Comas. He's 20 places off of Ayrton Senna and over a second off, having done a 1 minute 15.146, 29 laps completed for the Frenchman. And last of the runners, the second Willows of Martin Brundle, 1 minute 15.315, 32 laps completed, 1.204 seconds off. And as we watch Martin Brundle, I'll bid thee farewell, and we shall see you for the Brazilian Grand Prix. And we shall see you for then. Enjoy the rest of the remains of this session.